Hello and welcome to another edition of the Mexican Soccer Show. I'm your host, Cesar Hernandez, and today we're going to talk about the CCL. We're going to talk about the Liga MX, and of course, we're going to talk a little bit on El Tri. But before we get into that, let me introduce tonight's guest. Over in Chicago, we've got Raul, a.k.a. The Colorful Kit. How you doing, man? Thanks for joining today's pod.
Doing well. It's over 30 degrees in Chicago, so it's all good.
I don't even know what 30 degrees is. Let's go over to the to the East Coast. We've got Jason Markowitz, the man who predicted Cruz Azul's 5-0 win, if I remember correctly.
That's right. That's me. Yeah, I was all over that, and I don't see why they're not going to go win the title now. So should I predict that today? So mark it down.
mark it down. All right. We also might have Adriana Terrazas from ESPN. She might be joining us later on, but she's having some technical difficulties. I think that's pretty standard for the most part for the Mexican Soccer Show. So nothing out of the ordinary. But guys, let's jump into today's big question. Here it is. If JCO called on you to select the player to fill the defensive midfield role to face Germany, who would you choose, Jason?
It's tough. I made this question and then I have a hard time answering it, which is typical. But I don't know. I think that I would go a little off the ordinary selections. I think I'd probably want to either stick Hector Herrera or Andres Guardado back there. Not normally the positions they would always play, but I want another attacking midfielder on the field, and I can't sacrifice one of those players.
Right.
So I'd probably put Guardado back there. It's not perfect, but I don't see a perfect fit. There's not a clear answer here, and there's not one I'm totally confident in. And the way I see it, it's kind of like I think it could be a defensive liability to some extent, but I think Mexico is just going to be a defensive liability. Like there's going to be issues no matter what. So might as well just go for it, right? So let's try to score. Put Guardado in there. He could be our Mexican Pirlo and get another attacker on there.
The Mexican Pirlo, Andres Guardado. All right, Raul, what are you thinking here? Do you agree? You think you should put Guardado back there, or who do you think we should prefer to have back there?
I agree. I would personally go with the 4-2-3-1. So I would put Guardado and Herrera back there.
Oh, you just stole my answer, man. You look at my notes.
Doubling down.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. Mexico's not going to win this tournament winning games 1-0. Like we're not Italy.
That's right. That's right.
Nice. I mean, that's exactly what I have. I also have a 4-2-3-1 with Guardado and Herrera back there. But who cares what I have to say? Jason, do you have a list of what people have been saying, whether it be through the chat, whether it be on Twitter? I don't know if you have a list right now of.
I do, in fact.
Nice.
And there's a lot of responses to this one, a lot of heated debate, and lots and lots of calls for Jonathan Dos Santos, lots of calls for Edson Alvarez, actually. And a lot of calls for someone who's not normally called up recently, Gallito Vasquez. Which makes
I think they mean 2014 Gallito Vasquez, though.
Well, obviously. Yeah, right. I think we mean 2014 for a lot of these players, to be honest. But Gallito Vasquez, an interesting choice. We had a couple interesting responses, too. Gabriel Salazar says Gallito or Jonathan Gonzalez. He says Jonathan Dos Santos is great, but we need someone who would disrupt the opposing team's offense effectively. Felipe Corral Jr. says Diego Reyes needs to continue gaining experience in that position. That's top-notch talent.
I'm sure
he would qualify as that.
I'm sure there are a lot of interesting responses to that guy who said Diego Reyes.
He was not a popular person. Jorge Ibarra says Gallito Marquez or Edson Alvarez, the last one being his favorite. Not Rolly says, I want to say Jonah, but I do prefer him further up the field. And Pancho Villa's Army replied with Burrito. Burrito Hernandez. I guess that's a serious answer. Okay. I don't know.
No calls for Jesus Molina, Jesus Zavala? No, we're not.
There was one Molina reference in there
2013
somewhere.
Zavala, man. 2013.
Let's bring on Torrado. I mean, he's back with the national team, right? Torrado, let's see what he can do in that spot. Why not? Let's give that a try.
Let's do it.
All right, guys. Well, let's jump into today's show. So, like I said, we're going to be talking a little bit about El Tri, talking about the CCL, talk about Liga MX. So we're going to finish the show with a little bit about El Tri's upcoming roster release. But let's get into it. Let's talk about Mexico's midfield. Raul, I mean, is there any scenario in which Guardado and Herrera, I mean, barring injuries, that they're not going to be in the 11 in the first World Cup match?
I would say no, but do you guys remember 2010 when all those interesting lineup choices, and we were like, "What is he doing?" So if neither one of them is starting, I would immediately start an investigation. Like,
I think maybe Jonathan Dos Santos. I feel like that's the clear candidate here that he can maybe move into that starting spot. But I mean, it's just, I think at this point, just considering what Herrera is doing in Europe and what Guardado is doing in Europe as well, I know he just recovered from an injury. I mean, it has to be those two, right, Jason? I mean, regardless of how well Jonathan does, and I really like Jonathan Dos Santos, but it has to be Guardado and Herrera.
I think you put those two right there with like Hector Moreno, the players that you just would lock down. They're absolutely going to be in the starting 11. Yeah. But as Will said, there, we're talking about Osorio, so he might see something in Germany, right, and that he wants to use a different lineup, and it's totally within possibility that it could be a completely different midfield for that starting match. But yeah, there is locks as locks come for the starting 11.
Yeah, so one thing that me and Raul kind of talked about is if there was a possibility of 4-2-3-1 with Mexico. And if we had that 4-2-3-1, let's go back to you on Jason on this. Yeah. Say that we did play that formation. Who would be that number 10 player? Who's worthy of being a candidate for that position?
I mean, I think the most interesting one right now is Carlos Vela. I mean, he coming in and playing that role for LAFC right away was interesting, and certainly, you can't dive in judge it greatly based on 1-2 matches at this point. But
I mean, there were two really good matches, man.
they were, and make what you will with an MLS, the MLS opposition. But I mean, he's performing and he's doing it, and this is a player that everyone knows his abilities and his skills and the talent that Vela has. So. He makes a lot of sense. You could also consider Rodolfo Pizarro for that. I mean, he's borderline to make the roster at this point, so yeah. I don't know, but probably not starting 11 in that position. You have to say Giovanni Dos Santos. Probably not the best choice.
Do we have to say Giovanni Dos Santos?
He technically has that skill set, right? We could say that. Yeah. He doesn't show those skills anymore, but he does have that skill set at least once upon a time. And Marco Fabian, another player who can get that done as well. Again, we have to see what form he can muster before we get to that point. But he's someone that could technically get that done. But there's not a ton of obvious choices, I don't think. Do you guys have someone else for that?
Yeah, I would say, Raul, what are your thoughts? I mean, because I agree with everything Jason just said. I mean, I think number 1 would be Vela. Number 2 would be Fabian. And after that, I don't know, maybe Herrera. But I think Herrera should be a little bit more defensive-minded.
If we're going to play a 4-2-3-1, I think I was going to say with Vela too. I mean, I know it's only 180 minutes, but he's got 1 goal, 2 assists. He's averaging 3 key passes per game. I mean, I know people are going to probably in the chat, oh, it's MLS, but you know what? He's playing and he's playing well. So I would stick him in there. And another thing, if you put Vela in the middle, that opens up a wing spot. So you can start Tecatito and Chucky. Yep. So something else to think about too.
I mean, we all know L3 fans love to hate on Major League Soccer. I think that's just a given right there. Like, I think I sent out a tweet, which is kind of like half joking. I did say that if Guardado went to Major League Soccer, everyone would already say that he is one of the worst players of all time for the Mexican national team. All right, guys. So with all this talk of the formation, all this talk about who would play the number 10, who would play all these positions, what would be your perfect Mexican midfield? Let's go to Raul on this one first.
Well, I mean, if we're going to do the 4-2-3-1, I would start Guardado and Herrera in the middle. Both got high engines. Guardado can even drop back as a third center back. Granted, he's undersized, and we know Sodio has got a fetish for tall players. But I mean, he if you watch any game he's in the last 3 years at PSV or La Liga, it all starts with him. Center backs give him the ball. He goes up and he sprays it. And then you got Herrera, who's playing really well, box to box. I mean, because if you do have Vela starting as a number 10, he's not going to track back. I mean, historically. So you want 2 high motor guys in the middle, and I think if my dream would be those 2 guys. I mean, granted, if Jonah is having an amazing 6 weeks, 2 months in MLS, maybe, but it's a World Cup. You're gonna need some guys, especially with the yellow card accumulation. So that's what I would go with.
At least for me, I think it all depends on the formation. I think with the midfield, if it's a 4-2-3-1, I want Guardado and Herrera as defensive midfielders, and then Vela right in front. If we're talking about a 4-3-3, maybe you could be a little bit more attack-minded, which is weird saying that when last in a lineup had Vela. But maybe a 4-3-3, you can have Herrera sitting back a little bit deeper, and then you have Guardado and Jonathan Dos Santos pushing up a little bit. But Jason, your thoughts? I mean, there's obviously a lot of different possibilities here for the national team.
It'd be great if I had like a differing opinion. We could argue, but I mean, I'm following suit here. It's Guardado, Herrera, and Vela are my guys. I mean, I think it just makes the most sense, and I'll take that in any formation. To be perfectly honest, like I'm comfortable with that in the 4-3-3. I worry about. I mean, the one thing that sticks with me still, even with Guardado and Herrera, and especially Herrera, putting him back in the more defensive role. I still like. We often think of Osorio when we think about that Copa America meltdown.
Yeah,
Herrera is the one player that really sticks to me, and how like he really melted under that pressure and that press. Yeah. And he still kind of scares me a little bit. I mean, because we don't always get that consistency with him. We want it so bad from Herrera, but you have to pick him, and he's got to be there. It's interesting that. You mentioned Jonathan Dos Santos because there's a lot of popular support for him to be in this midfield, but I don't think there's a lot of support right now from us. Why do you think that is? I
mean, there's just no room for him. I think that's I'm a big fan of Jonathan. I think that he has an incredible work ethic, and I think he just has an immense amount of energy. And you see that a lot from Mexico. You've seen it a lot recently. You saw that in the Confederations Cup too. A lot of people are putting Jonathan in their like best 11 for the Confederations Cup. So I think that it is because of that drive that he has. But when Guardado and Herrera are at their peak, I think it's hard for him to find a spot in that 11. And I do think just because of the level of play that Guardado and Herrera are involved in, I think that's why they sneak just slightly past him. I think Jonathan would be one of those guys who you'd immediately want off the bench in the second half, and like I said, I'm a big fan of the player, but I think that Guardado and Herrera are just a little bit like above them on the depth chart.
Yeah, and with Jonah, everyone knows he's a center mid, but he played right mid for Villarreal for a long time. So I mean, you can put him on the wing. He has played on the as an attacking wing player too on the right side. So it's just another option off the bench. And to finish up, we're talking about Vela as the number 10. Fabian off the bench, he's very flexible. He can play left, middle, right. So it just gives you some more flexibility, and we all know player rotation. So
I will say that we all are kind of in agreement with a lot of these names. But if we had a guest on the show named Juan Carlos Osorio, the dude that he'd be talking about right now is Diego Reyes. He'd probably be talking about Reyes and talk about how he can win aerial battles, how he is a little bit more defensive minded than the other options. I mean, what are our thoughts on Reyes? Because when you bring up Reyes nowadays, like whether it be as a defensive midfielder or even just as a center defender. I mean, he's such a polarizing figure for Mexican national team fans. I mean,
I don't know. Like, I want Reyes to be that defensive midfielder. I wanted him to be that, but he just hasn't done it. I mean, like, I don't know how many games with L3 we've seen where he is the worst player on the field consistently. Like, he comes out and it's just a liability in that position. Coming out when he went to Europe, I assumed he was going to be that. I assumed he was going to be a future for Mexico in that position because watching him when he was with America, like he had all the talent in the world to become that. Now, I don't see him being comfortable in that defensive midfielder role. I mean, it hasn't been pretty. Now, I'm a little more comfortable with him at center back. I think he's playing pretty well in Europe at this point, and I'm okay with him in that position. If he gets slotted in there at some point in some of the matches, I'm a little more comfortable with that, and I think that would be fine. But I don't know. He just has played so poorly with Mexico in that defensive midfielder role. Like it's hard to justify at this point.
And he's not a young guy anymore. I think in his defense, in the past, we've said like, oh, he's an up and coming player. He's gonna get there. He's gaining confidence little by little. But I mean, he's what, 25? It might even I don't know exactly how old he is anymore. But he's obviously not that young kid who went to Porto. I mean, he's had some time now in Europe, and you're still waiting to see that consistency, which sucks because he had that great season recently in La Liga, and you wish you could see that kind of performance, that kind of consistency with the national team. But that's just something that you've yet to get from Reyes, and I doubt you'll be able to get that within the next couple months leading up to the World Cup. I mean, he's lost his starting spot in Porto. I mean, he did have that starting spot at the beginning of the year, but now he's been benched once again. He's only had one start in the last 5 competitive matches for Porto. So I do worry about that as well. But Raul, any final thoughts about the midfield or any thoughts regarding Reyes?
Would you guys feel different about Reyes if there was like a 3-man back line, Reyes was sitting in front, but then he had Guardado next to him? So he wouldn't.
I got to map this out. Okay.
Because Reyes, I think he's strong. I mean, I love Reyes, but he's been terrible as the Rafa Marquez.
Yeah.
But if he's just like the destroyer, he gets the ball and like, here you go, Guardado, take it and distribute it. Because I think when he has the ball and he has to make those decisions, those passing decisions, he's been really bad. But I can see why you want him in there as an extra defensive cover. I mean, I'd rather have him than a 45-year-old Marquez. But if you're going to count on him,
according to reports, Rafa might be coming back. So
you should. I mean, whatever. I don't mind Rafa coming, but like, I can see him having him as like a midfielder with the intent of having him as a third center back. But if you have him in the middle as, hey, this guy's going to kickstart an offense, you're not going to go anywhere. I mean, he doesn't have the passing skills you need.
Yeah, well, let's see what's going to happen because it's not going to be that surprising if Reyes gets to start in at least one match in this World Cup. All right, guys, let's switch gears. Let's talk about Major League Soccer. They've been doing all right? Seems like they've been doing okay. And
did the check from some clear? Can we talk?
My favorite league in the world, Major League Soccer. Liga MX is number 5. I don't know. I can't tell. But yeah, no. Toronto got a 2-1 win over Tigres. Tijuana lost at home 2-0 against the Red Bulls. Seattle got a 1-0 win over Chivas. I mean, Jason. People always talk about. I was like, oh, are they closing the gap? Are they closing the gap? Is it actually happening? Is this just something that we really shouldn't care about because it's just the first leg and Liga MX teams can bounce back? What are your thoughts here?
Well, is the gap closing between MLS and Liga MX? Obviously, yes, it is. I mean, MLS is obviously improving. It's pretty clear. You just look at the rosters from where they were a few years ago, where it was so top heavy with the talent. The MLS rosters are absolutely have more depth now than they've had for some time. They're just becoming stronger teams very clearly. But those matches last week are absolutely no sign of that whatsoever. They don't represent that in any way, as much as just those were 3 soccer matches. And some things happen. But if you really look at those matches, if you subtract the score lines and what actually had the way the balls bounced in those matches, like, I don't think you could say, oh, well, MLS is right there with Liga MX. I mean, it's still pretty strong gap between those teams. I'm comfortable saying that the Liga MX squads were still fairly stronger than the MLS teams, and there's still a significant gap, if you want to use that, between MLS and Liga. Liga MX is obviously stronger, but it doesn't mean MLS can't defeat Liga MX teams sometimes. That's the way the game works.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I do think that the gap is closing, but Liga MX is still, I mean, regardless of what happens this week, what happened last week, I still think, like you said, I mean, those are just matches. Those are just random matches in the CCL. I do think Liga MX teams are better. But yeah, I do think, I think that was a perfect example. You said the rosters. They used to just have the DP players, and now they're signing that South American talent, which is what makes a lot of Liga MX teams great. A lot of that South American talent is now being, brought over to Major League Soccer. So it makes sense that why the gap is closing. But yeah, let's see what happens in the second leg. I don't know. Like I said, I do think the gap is closing, but MLS teams still have a lot to prove this week. Rel, what are your thoughts on that discussion when it comes up to how close Liga MX, how close MLS teams are to Liga MX teams?
It's halftime.
It's halftime.
People. It doesn't like Jason was saying. It doesn't matter if MLS can win CCL, and I would still say they're not getting immensely closer. They are getting closer, but it's like NCAA tournament, or it's like a UEFA Champions League. Basel makes it to the round of 16. Is the gap closing? It's like, no. It's one specific tournament. Yeah. Do it over 2, 3, 4 years, then I'll say, oh, they're on par with each other. But the gap is closing because it couldn't get any bigger, to be honest. You got Colorado Rapids. MLS gives them a bye, gives them extra allocation money. I don't know if let's not go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah,
but
let's talk about TAM in detail. What TAM means?
TAM for GAM, yeah. And then their coach comes out and says, "Oh, it's a preseason match."
Yeah. Yeah.
But the gap is closing. Obviously, but I wouldn't. I know the MLS.com writers are ready with those same articles they have every year, but I'm just gonna wait till Thursday.
We'll wait until that CCL fever runs out for some of these writers. I guess technically I'm one of them.
The fever runs out right around the semifinals when the MLS Twitter account doesn't acknowledge it at all. So.
All right, Marco Medina on the chat said gap is closing, but Liga MX will react. Guys, let's
Liga MX will react.
let's talk about some of these first legs. I guess I'll jump into it with that first leg between Xolos and New York Red Bulls. Jason was talking about, just that some of these sides, Liga MX sides, did look pretty good. Xolos had 30 shots in that match. Luis Robles for New York Red Bulls just had an incredible performance, right? I don't know if you guys, either of you had a chance to watch that game, but Xolos were clearly the better side. I think that, and after the match, Jesse March, the Red Bulls manager, he mentioned a couple of times that they needed a little bit of luck. And I do think that on another night, Tijuana could have easily sneaked past the New York Red Bulls. I don't know what your guys' thoughts on that match between Tijuana and Red Bulls. Because like I said, I do think that Tijuana was a better side, but obviously that doesn't matter if you're not scoring any goals. That doesn't matter if you're allowing a couple from Bradley Wright Phillips.
Yeah, you said it exactly. 30 shots. I think Red Bulls had 3 shots on target, and they get the 2 goals. It's just it's the way it goes sometimes. Yeah. Xolos dominated that match. They were far superior. It wasn't very close. Red Bulls are an interesting team. They're a young squad. They could run. They present a challenge. They're kind of almost like the MLS version of Xolos in some way. They're very similar squads, but Xolos are better. And 61% of possession. They had so much of it. So it's just the way it goes. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see because I think with 2-0 down, going back to New Jersey now. With the 2 away goals, it's going to be a hard one for Xolos to turn. Even if they are a superior squad, going on the road to that stadium, it's going to be difficult. I'm taking the trip up 95 tomorrow to go watch this one. And,
nice.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I think I'm not sure what's going to happen. I think it'll get close, but it's going to be a tough one for Xolos to turn around because it's quite a hole they've dug for themselves now.
Are Xolos going to put their first team squad out there?
Yeah, it looks they really experimented in that away leg, the away match against Tigres recently. So and they rested a lot of starters. So I do think that they'll go with a lot of starters in tomorrow's match. But anyway, Ro, any thoughts regarding Xolos or the Red Bulls? Because 1 second, everyone's going to claim that I'm a Soccer United Marketing MLS fan. Now I'm turning into a Liga MX apologist. So.
Like Jason was saying, those 2 away goals are just going to be huge.
Yeah.
Do you know what the weather is going to be like there, Jason?
Cold for certain. I think it's just I don't think it's any precipitation or anything.
Is it cold for me and you or cold for Cesar? What kind of cold?
Kind of cold for Cesar. It's like,
hey, I would
30s.
You know what? I saw there were some photos of Xolos doing a walkthrough of the Red Bull Arena, and they all look like they're about to take a trip up to Mammoth Mountain or something like that. It was just they definitely look extremely cold out there. All right, let's jump into the next match. Jason, what were your thoughts on Toronto's 2-1 win over Tigres?
This one was a lot more even. I don't know. It was as the match was progressing, Tigres had that early goal lead, but it was a lot of back and forth. And Toronto set up pretty defensively, but they kept finding a way to beat Tigres on the break, and they were doing it consistently and getting a lot of chances. I think they had more scoring opportunities than Tigres did.
Yeah.
So they look pretty strong. I think this is the most evenly matched. It's the one we anticipated that way with probably the strongest MLS team, the MLS champion, obviously. Clearly, you look at the rosters, it's probably the most stacked roster in MLS. And you're looking at the most stacked roster in Liga MX, but this is a Liga MX side that you can't always trust in these kind of competitions.
Yep.
With Tuca Ferretti, it's not something he's always prioritized. And I don't think there's a ton of evidence that it wasn't prioritized in the first leg. But there's just a little bit of doubt in these big matches. I don't know if we call it a big match, but these international matches with this Tuca Ferretti side. And I don't know. The first leg, it was really even. It was really tight. The TFC came back. Toronto got the late goal and took the advantage, which was huge for them. Because you think if they draw level going to the Volcan, it's going to be tough for Toronto. But now with that goal lead, they have a decent chance going forward.
But Tigres did get that away goal. So that's
true.
Crucial. Regardless of the loss, they did get that one away goal. And that's going to be so important for them heading back home. Once that second leg is finished, who do you think is going to be going into the semis? Do you think it's going to be Toronto or do you think it's going to be Tigres?
Who's the best player on either team?
Giovinco.
Josie Altidore?
Whoa.
Victor Vasquez.
Did you see that golazo Gignac had this? I was actually disappointed that they met. I kind of wanted these two teams to meet in the final.
Yeah.
That would have been nice. But I mean, not to troll, but like if Toronto wins, is this a win for MLS? I mean, technically they qualified not through MLS, but through the Canadian Cup, right?
Yeah, I mean,
I feel like MLS was so.
If I was an MLS fan, I would claim that 100%. Like Toronto since birth, Toronto until I die. I love Toronto. If I was an MLS fan, I'd be doing that, man.
I would believe it if Drake started tweeting about Toronto FC.
All right, guys, let's go to the next match. Seattle getting a narrow win over Chivas. I mean, Raul, much is made of MLS teams being in preseason form, but it's also fair that, a side like Chivas that is bouncing off, the recent match against America in the Clásico Nacional, did they have a little bit of a, can we say, disadvantage here? He's once again Cesar being a Liga MX apologist.
That's one of the things about, these international tournaments, whether it's in Champions League in Europe or Champions League here, it's a travel. It took Chivas 10 hours to get from Guadalajara to Seattle because they had to stop and refuel in Phoenix or something. So,
oh wow, that's crazy.
You didn't hear about that? Yeah, they had to stop, and people were trolling on Twitter saying, "No, he was too cheap to pay for a charter." But I guess they just had to refuel. I'm not sure. But,
I really like that Phoenix airport, by the way. So there must have been some nice spots to get a lunch or two.
Like we were saying, probably sent someone to go get some In-N-Out before when they were waiting. But it's just one of those things where Chivas went from a tough game, and then they had to fly out to Seattle. It's a long flight, and then that field, it's the best turf, but it's still turf. It's tough, but I think Chivas are in trouble here just because.
Just the form that they're in the regular season too. I think that I was talking to someone earlier today from the Seeing Red podcast from specific about the Red Bulls New York, and I was talking about Chivas, just thinking that they were the weakest team by far going into this competition. If anything, this 1-0 loss, it's not exactly that bad for Chivas. Going back home with that 1-0 loss, just because when you consider what their form has been in the regular season, so this isn't exactly that terrible for them.
No, like you're saying, they're like the weakest of the Liga MX teams that got in, but you just never know with these type of tournaments. It's 90 minutes, and it's just a battle. Will Chivas generate enough chances? Will Pulido put some in the back of the net? Could I see Chivas winning 2-0? I could totally see that. I can see them losing 2-0 as well too. So it's one of those things. I don't know. We'll see. Seattle had a game on Saturday, and so we'll see how they adjust to the weather in Mexico and Guadalajara.
All right, guys. One final question. I'm sneaking in here. It isn't on the rundown.
But wait, real quick. Can you imagine if Dempsey scores the goal to get Chivas out?
I just want to see Tijuana take on Seattle. That way you can have like the synthetic like turf Clásico in the CCL. Like that'd be interesting right there.
I think both teams are only like 10 years old, right?
I think Seattle's been around long. All right, we're getting off track here. All right, guys. All right, guys. So, which Liga MX teams are we going through the semis? Jason? I think America's already going through. But from the other ones, like who do you think are going to be going to the semis?
I have no confidence in Chivas at this point. I can't trust that they'll score. I think Cholos will make it close, but I think it might be too much of a comeback.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with Jason. That's who I see going through as well.
I think we lost Jason there for a second. Yeah. Hello? No? Going once? Going twice? All right, roll. What are the Liga MX sides are going through?
Yeah, I don't. Oh, there he is. He's back.
Oh. There we go.
Tigres and America.
Tigres and America. Okay.
Yep.
Roll.
I agree. Tigres and America.
I'm saying Tigres America and Chivas. I think Chivas are going to pull one back.
I can see that happening. I don't know. What do you guys think of the attendance is going to be at Chivas game?
Probably not that good. I don't think it's going to be that. I can't imagine being,
the one thing that's going to tell if Chivas are really going for it is their lineup. Because, Almeida, he's getting graded on making the Liguilla, you know?
Season's already gone for Chivas, though. I mean, this is like they're not making the playoffs. They're not making the playoffs. This is their only way of really like redeem. They're like really like kind of redeeming like at least some semblance of hope, at least going forward, is by doing well in the CCL. So I think it's near impossible. I'm sure it's like mathematically like still like there's a way for them to qualify for the playoffs. I just think it's gonna be near impossible. Just like go for it. Just go all the way with the CCL. If I was Almeida, that's what I would do.
Yeah.
All right, Jason. Any other or Raul, to any other final thoughts on the CCL before we focus on Liga MX?
No more CONCACAF Champions League.
No more CONCACAF Champions League.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the preliminary stage of the CONCACAF Champions League and what our thoughts on Taro's performance. No, I'm kidding. Let's jump into Liga MX. We got a game here. We're gonna be we have 5 different I guess we can say statements, questions, and we're gonna rate them from a scale from 1 to 10. Raul, on a scale of 1 to 10, how worried should Rayados fans be with another loss?
I mean, they're the 8th seed right now, but between the 8th seed and the 13th seed, it's 2 points. Yeah. So I would be worried just because you might say, oh, they're only 1 point behind the 8th seed. Yeah, it might be 1 point in 4 teams. Yeah. So it's just tough. It's just this is like the point of the season where you just get every point you can. Just get points to get to the Liguilla. That's all you really care about.
Jason, on a scale 1 to 10, how excited should Cruz Azul fans, I don't know if you know any, be with this win? And I mean, just the significant amount of goals they got.
I'd give it a 4. There's some excitement. It's a little late. I think the ship has sailed on the season. It's late. I mean, technically, like you were saying with Chivas, they could fight their way back into Liguilla places, but there's so many teams ahead of them. And I mean, are you confident that Cruz Azul is going to carry this performance over week in and week out against other teams? Of course not. So, But I mean, as a Cruz Azul fan, it's a win. It's nice, and they actually scored some goals.
What a win, dude!
It's a comforting feeling. It's nice. There's some excitement because it's not a weekend marked by utter and complete disappointment,
like West Ham.
Oh my God, we didn't even have to get into West Ham. Or maybe we should at some point later. Oh my God, man.
Oh my God, that's so bad.
All right, but Raul, I mean, the other end, Pachuca got that 5-0 loss against Cruz Azul. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how concerned should Pachuca fans be about their team moving forward?
If you lose 5-0 to Cruz Azul, you should be very concerned. I would say a 7. Just 7. Because not even just giving up 5 goals to anyone just is demoralizing.
Yeah.
They need to recharge Conejo's batteries, put him back out there. I don't know, but it's just losing 5-0 is just tough. It's just tough.
Conejo and Chacos too.
I look at that a little bit differently. I wouldn't be too concerned. I mean, I would say a 3 for that. I think they're still like they still have that young team. They have the veterans that I think they need to do some retooling. Like some of the veterans on the squad need to be replaced. They do need to make some changes, but I think there's, as a Pachuca fan, you could have some confidence that this those in charge of the squad are going, and the roster in general, are going to make some decent decisions and be able to retool and find a way moving forward. So, this season it's troubling, but moving forward, you're still, you would buy some stock in Pachuca to kind of turn it around and before too long find their way back to not losing 5-0 to Cruz Azul.
Yeah, all right, that academy too.
Yeah, right. That incredible academy over there. Yeah, you never know what young talent they'll be producing next. Yeah. All right, next question. Likelihood that Toluca finishes in the top 4. Jason.
I'd say a 9 out of 10. I mean, it seems like a pretty well, almost a lock at this point.
I gave it an 8.
And they're just plugging along. I mean, there's not a lot that's flashy with the team. Like, we're not talking about them on the show every week, but they just keep getting results after results, and they're not allowing too many goals. They're being, they're just pretty consistent. I just like the squad. I don't really back them as a serious title contender, but I expect them to be in that top 4. I don't see a lot of teams that are lower than them really making a strong move to get up there and push them out of one of those top spots. So I think they're going to be just about where they are right now when the season ends.
All right, one more. We're saving this one for Raul. Likelihood that Landon Donovan, Captain America, scores a goal this season.
High. 1 goal, right?
1 goal. Yes,
Yeah.
scores a league goal.
Does an own goal count?
Own goals don't count. What's the likelihood that he gets just 1 goal?
What about friendlies?
he's gonna score against the San Jose Earthquake. Was that friendly?
And then everyone's gonna be like, "Did he celebrate? Did he celebrate against his former team?" I think he'll score. I mean, it's been frustrating, but people got to remember he hadn't played a game in how long? I mean, you can't just go straight from hanging out at the beach to playing in the Liga MX.
Yeah.
First, you just can't. It's gonna take some time, but his contract runs through December. He'll score a goal.
Yeah, I think I would be surprised if he gets a goal. I mean, he's still getting those second half appearances. So, I mean, who knows if he'll eventually get a start for Leon? I mean, but I do think that he'll at least get a goal here. Yeah, I mean, any other thoughts on the Liga MX weekend? Obviously, we went through there with just the 5 questions there, but anything that stood out to you? I mean, other than that Gignac golazo. I guess another thing we could bring up is just that golazo from Everaldo for Querétaro. I mean, that was one of the goals of the season. And if you guys haven't had a chance to check that out, just go on YouTube, wherever. I mean, just look at that goal, because that was just incredible from him. But yeah, just any other thoughts on Liga MX in general before we start talking about Loteria?
We talked Santos last week, but I mean, they just keep going, right?
Yeah.
I mean, lose Giannini before the match, it doesn't matter. Plug Furchin, he scores. Like it's incredible what this team is doing. I just be shocked. Like I just did not see anything like this coming from the squad, and it's impressive. I mean, we mentioned Gaita Vasquez at the top of the show a bit, but he certainly had a big impact on that team, and looking pretty good at this point.
So we don't have Adriana on the show, but we do have her on the chat. That's some serious dedication right there, Adriana. Thank you so much. She said Donovan will score next season. All right, let's move on. Let's move on to El Tri. Guys, the national team roster is expected to be released this Thursday. I mean, it usually is released before. It's usually the Thursday before, like the week before the match. So, Raul, I mean, do you believe this list will be somewhat of an early preview for the World Cup roster?
It should. I mean, quite frankly, if it's not, you have to. I mean, it's coming to the time where you need to pick your squad and start gelling. These guys meet up a couple times a year. I mean, granted, the World Cup camp is longer than most national team camps, but you just gotta get the reps. You have to get the reps, especially with Osorio when he likes to switch up the formations. You need to get as much reps as possible.
Yeah, I mean, I think. I mean, it looks like Gio might have a little bit of injury there, so there's a chance he might not make the roster, but I do think that this could be pretty close. I mean, if not now, then when? When you got to train with these players. So I would be very surprised if it was experimental. Jason, your thoughts? I mean, it has to be a strong roster for Mexico.
I mean, that's what logic dictates, right? These are the real preparatory matches here in March. You have a chance to bring in all these players, your A squad, absolutely the best, get them those reps, just like you guys said. But, it wouldn't be surprising to see a few question marks on that list. So I don't think there's like a necessarily a set 23, and there could be a few surprises. There could be a few young players brought in, as Osorio has done a few times. And I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't necessarily look at it this way, that it needs to be his World Cup roster. It could be a little bit of fluctuation in there, but nothing too shocking. But a couple young players here or there, I wouldn't be shocked.
Yeah, Raul, which unexpected players do you think could potentially make the list? Or do you think there will be any unexpected players?
Is Jonathan Gonzalez unexpected?
I'd say so at this point. Yeah,
okay,
that could be.
I can see him
be on there.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, like you were saying, it might not be the 23 he's going to take, but I mean, it's going to be close. So if he thinks he might make it, you should call him up. Take another look at him. I mean, why not?
I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Ponchito Gonzalez there, or maybe Gallito Vasquez. I mean, just because of the seasons that they're having. Well, they're going to go to the World Cup. I mean, obviously, that's unlikely with what Osorio has done so far. But I wouldn't be surprised if we saw either of those names. Jason, any other? Yeah.
I mean, you have to look at the roster spots 24 through 30. I mean, granted, you pretty much don't dip into them, but I mean, Gallito, I mean, who I can't think of his name. Oh, Chapo Montes. I mean, he broke his leg like the last friendly before the World Cup.
Yeah.
I mean, hopefully you don't dip into those 24 through 30, but you need to flesh that out to see, who you have. Worst comes to worst. Jason,
any other unexpected players that you think might sneak into the list?
I don't have any other names. I would just say, I think there's some fluctuation in the defense. I think there's a wide range of players that could be on the list or out of the list. that Osorio could go with, and we've seen a lot with the national team. So no big surprises or shockers, but there's a lot of players, the Hugo Ayala's, like these different defenders that could be in there or not. So there's a lot of fluctuation there. So we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of our final question here, just whether any regulars could be left home. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Ayala was there. Roll, any other thoughts? Just regulars that could be dropped. We're not even dropped, but just maybe even given a little bit of a break for this World Cup. I'll say World Cup, but friendly call-up. I already got World Cup on the mind, man.
I mean, a part of me would say I wouldn't be surprised if like Chicharito wasn't on there. If he was trying to bring another striker and like say, who else can I start? But Chicharito's not playing, so it's like you need to give him minutes at this point. So I mean, if Chicharito was playing day in day out, I could see him saying, "Hey, stay home, stay there. We'll give Raul Jimenez some minutes." But I mean, neither one of them is getting any minutes. So
on the chat, Antonio Rojas says, Guti, Pizarro, and Govea will make it. I mean, that wouldn't be too crazy if we saw Eric Gutierrez there. I mean, he's been playing pretty well. Same thing with Pizarro. I mean, Pizarro's been doing quite well for Chivas. And regardless of Chivas' problems, that could be another player who could sneak in there. And Govea, I mean, Osorio has he has rewarded players like him with a call-up before because of what he's done in Europe. So, yeah, maybe we'll see Govea as well.
I agree. I think Pizarro, I really expect him to see him in this list. The way he's been playing in the league and his performance in San Antonio as well. I expect to see him back with the squad. Not necessarily guaranteed to make the World Cup roster at this point, but it could have a lot to do with this call-up, and I think he'll be there.
All right. Well, guys,
real quick, I got a question for either one of you guys.
Yeah, go for it.
Who's a player who last let's say 12 months ago, if I told you had no chance of being on the list, you would be surprised. I mean, like Pineda, I think 12 months ago we were like, oh, he's going to Russia, and now no one has brought his name up.
I think it's got to be Orbelin, just because he seemed like the future of the national team. When you're looking at those young options, you're saying that just like, oh yeah, this guy, little by little, he's going to work his way up to the first team, and he's going to work, and he's going to be pushing Guardado and Herrera for minutes, and he's at least going to be a backup going to the World Cup. I think it has to be Orbelin Pineda. I mean, I think that is a guy who stands out the most to me. I don't know what Jason thinks. Nope, Jason, you there?
Oh, back.
Oh, sorry.
Cut out there, but I don't know if you guys already mentioned him when I lost you there, but I would say the other guy that is surprised me so much that is not necessarily a lock at this point is Edson Alvarez. I think he'll still probably be on the squad, but the fact that he's not a lock at this point, someone where he's guaranteed almost to be cracking that sort of 11, that's a surprise to me. Not quite the Orbelin level of shock, but Edson not being the lock to be in this roster is pretty surprising for me.
I think you could make an argument, too, for surprise that someone isn't a guarantee in the 11, which is Jonathan Dos Santos. I think just considering the fact that he was Mexico's best player in the Confederations Cup, and now heading into this World Cup, we're saying, like, ooh, I mean, where does he fit in the midfield? Where is he going to go on the bench? I think that's another surprising player, too.
I bet you he starts, though, because, I mean, I can see him playing a 4-3-3, more defensive.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, no, that wouldn't be surprising either if that were to happen. You did have Jonathan. But I'm saying that just, like, there is that conversation whether he will even like make it into the 11.
Yeah.
All right. Well, guys, looks like it's only 50 minutes into the show, but I guess we'll wrap it up here unless Jason or Raul have any final thoughts regarding Liga MX, the CONCACAF Champions League, the preliminary CONCACAF Champions League qualifying round, life, love, and the search of happiness. Anything, guys?
I got a couple of things I have to bring up.
Oh, okay. I don't like where this is going, but go for it.
I'm like legitimately scared at this point.
Yeah.
What the hell is going on at West Ham?
Yeah, man.
Have you guys kept up with what the hell's going on? Like,
it was inevitable. Even if you, it's a
good match on the weekend there.
It's a quiet one. It was a pretty calm one. Looked like there was no animosity at all whatsoever.
Like they're already talking about them playing a couple home games behind closed doors. Like,
yeah,
like just the entire stadium stormed the field and start brawls in the stands. Like, it's not going well. I guess there's all these protest marches that are taking place. They're supposed to be taking place outside. I guess the ownership's not super popular among the West Ham faithful at this point. They're into some serious trouble. I mean, it's almost like the season they had a few years ago where they pushed into those Europa League places. They were up there. Just that amazing season before they moved into the new stadium has really set them back because the expectations were raised for that fan base, and they just absolutely bottomed out. And it's an ugly team to be on right now. Sorry.
The best part was when the captain of West Ham, who's been there 20 years, slammed that fan.
Oh man, what a mess! I mean, there was a pitch invasion. There's security concerns, and the fans were just like looking at ownership and just like yelling at them. And ownership had to like make or the board or whatever. They just had to make their way up. I mean, that was just. And you said, what is going on with West Ham? So much is going on right now. So much is going on. So much past Chicharito. So much more that just like more so than just is Chicharito going to get a start? And it's like no, like yeah, are they going to get a fine? Are they going to play behind like closed doors? So I mean, just so much is going on. All right, Raul, what was your second thing?
Oh, and then did you guys see the Greek league with the owner came out with a gun?
Oh my goodness, that has nothing to do with Mexican soccer, but yeah. I was.
Pulido played there 2 years ago. You know,
that's a tenuous connection there. Very very. Tenuous.
Well, it does like we sometimes we kind of brush over and we don't delve into Liga MX ownership too much, but this kind of makes them look pretty good.
Yeah, it does. It really does.
So yeah, this is a lot better than just whatever happened in Liga. That does put it in a different light, doesn't it?
Say what you will about Jorge Vergara, but he is not storming the field with a weapon. So.
With a gun. All right, Jason, I'm going to leave it up to you. You're going to close out the show. Close out anything maybe regarding the CISO or just upcoming Liga MX matches.
Well, I would just say that I'm super excited for these upcoming Mexico friendlies. They are friendlies.
Yeah.
But we're really in the crux of it now. We passed that. We're down to double digits in days. And I was just looking at the calendar and looking that June. It's not really all that far away at this point, and I'm starting to get like legitimately excited. And so I can't wait for these matches. Can't wait to see Mexico back in action because we're getting right down to it. It's almost Panini time. The stickers coming out here. It's all just culminating here, and I just. Can't wait. It'll be really exciting.
All right. Well, thanks, everyone. Thanks, Jason. Thanks, Raul. We'll see you on the next edition of the Mexican Soccer Show. Have a good night, guys.
See you guys.